We're the Batman episode 10 entitled Sacrifice. This episode was actually pretty cool because it did a lot. It brought back multiple villains and it introduced a main character or a main villain that we know from the Batman franchise. We get Anarky back in this episode. We also get Lady Shiva from the League of Assassins. And we get, even more work, more teamwork from Batman and Katana. Anarchy in this episode, I feel like he was really different from the episode when he was introduced. And, you know, thinking back about those episodes, he seemed a lot like, the Riddler, but, not as, crazy and stuff. He seemed, really calm and calculating. And then, of course, once he gets beaten, he kind of changes a little. So maybe that's, why we have a different version of him this time around. Or at least he seems different, to me because in the beginning of the episode he's fighting against the ninjas and he's like being kind of funny and sarcastic with them, and I just thought it was really different compared to how he acted when he was first introduced. But I really liked his character in this episode, I think, more than I did when he was originally introduced, because him as that sort of like playful killer type character makes him more interesting to me than just another you know problem type of guy where he makes crazy situations for Batman to solve, which would be the Riddler. So it's kind of cool to have him as that type of guy where he tries to basically just trick everyone he can into doing what he wants. And in this episode, he tricks Lady Sheva into releasing a virus, or at least he tries to have her release this virus so that he can destroy Gotham pretty much. And how he does that is by stealing this container and basically saying, I'm going to hold on to it until you do this for me. And in that container is Ra's al Ghul, which we get at the end of the episode. So either next week or, obviously weeks to follow, we're going to get Ra's al Ghul, we're going to get the Lazarus Pit in some form. It might not actually be in the show, although I would assume it will be, because either he's dead or he's like in some weird stasis form right now. But either we'll get the Lazarus Pit, or it'll at least be mentioned, because the League of Assassins and Ra's al Ghul, the Lazarus Pit is like the third step right there. So we're gonna get that very soon, and we could get Talia. I kind of doubt it, but she might get mentioned too. In this season, maybe next season, something like that. But we have our first main villain introduced at the end of this episode, and for some reason, before they showed him, I don't know why I thought this, but I was thinking it might be Talia for like no apparent reason. It doesn't even make sense now that I think about it. But the first thing I thought was it might be Talia, who is Raish's daughter, for anyone who doesn't know. But it is Raish, who is the leader, like basically like the ultimate leader. Like we have Lady Sheva, she'd be like the second in command to him, I believe. And of course I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. She's in control now, but once Raish is back, he's top dog. But this episode I thought was really cool because Anarchy was a pretty cool character. Some of the stuff he did, like the scene where he blows up all the cars, I really like that scene just because he says like, I didn't mean to like hurt you or anything. I just wanted to make sure I had your attention. And he blows up like 5 cars. And when they have the whole conversation, and at the very end, he's like, oh, and by the way, duck, because he blows the giant like plasma screen TV up. I really enjoyed that for some reason because it just seemed really cool that he could have caught them off guard, but he didn't, and he just let them know because his goal really was to have him go and fight the League of Assassins and basically be destroyed by the toxin that the League went to uncover for Anarchy. And so once the League ninjas get beat up by Batman and Katana, and then they get infected, things get pretty interesting because Batman and Katana, they don't exactly work with Lady Shiva, but they have her along, I guess. That's all I can really say. I mean, she's in handcuffs most of the time until she escapes. But, they're all together, and it seemed like they would actually cooperate. And in the scene where Batman says, either cooperate or die, when he's holding the handcuffs up, I thought he meant like he would handcuff her to something and she'd basically just be screwed. But cooperating was her being handcuffed, which I thought was interesting. But at the same time, it makes perfect sense because she is a deadly lady, and we obviously see that because even though she is in handcuffs, towards the end of the episode, she does fight Batman with just her legs, and she does even escape by like grabbing his arm and basically using his gauntlets to cut through the handcuffs. So it makes perfect sense. Obviously he's Batman, so he's calculating every move, and he knows how deadly she is as a person. So even cooperating with her, she was in handcuffs, and I just enjoyed that. And obviously, with the episode being entitled "Sacrifice," you know, Batman and Katana, they kind of go through more lessons as Batman is trying to teach Katana. This is how we do things, and this is what we do. And it starts off in the beginning of the episode when they kind of interrupt the poker game, and that fire started so fast. By the way, like that thing just like went up in flames. I thought that was kind of funny. But the lesson in that portion of the episode is that we don't sacrifice, lives for information. We sacrifice ourselves pretty much for the greater good, or we sacrifice other things for the greater good of either, well, I guess for the greater good of other people and never ourselves. And Katana learns that throughout this episode, but she kind of has that struggle when she's basically with Batman and then Lady Shiva or Sheva. I keep mixing it up, so sorry. Whatever the pronunciation is, if you can put that below, because I keep forgetting how to say it right. But she's with them both, and obviously with her having been with the League of Assassins, and she's murdered people and things like that. Lady Sheva or Shiva. I'm gonna say Sheva. I believe that's the right way. But Lady Sheva is like, I know who you really are. I know your true nature, and it's cool to see that. And one of my favorite lines is when Batman, like, she's basically getting on his nerves, and he's trying to get through the door, and he's like, "Do you want to see my true nature?" And I thought that was a really great line. I thought it was just really funny. But Katana goes through, and she's not really having a struggle. It's just that we get to hear the perspective of Lady Sheva and how she knows Katana, or Tatsu from her past with the League of Assassins, and how she's like, you're pretty much a natural born killer. This isn't you. You aren't like a superhero who just like beats people up and then leaves them, to the cops. You murdered people. You finished the job, and I just enjoyed that little dynamic that they had. And in the end, Tatsu slash Katana, she does decide that she is a hero, and she decides to sacrifice herself for Batman so that they can have time to basically escape the building and keep it from like imploding, and which would save the city, but at the same time she would obviously die, but she sacrificed herself for the greater good, which would be Batman and the entire city of Gotham. Something else we got, which was a nice little portion, was Lieutenant Gordon. Basically, even more so in this episode than other episodes, he's trusting Batman again. And I say more so in this episode because he goes through and he deals with Kilroy, I believe that was her name, and she seemed familiar. Like the name sounds familiar, but I could just be thinking of something else. But she has like confirmation from the mayor, and then he gets confirmation from the mayor to basically like stop the breach, and then she like goes to the governor. And I thought it was a pretty cool thing that he was really defending Batman so much, because normally, when we've seen it in past episodes, it's Batman and Gordon pretty much alone. And then this, it's like a pretty big deal. They have this giant chemical facility. Everyone knows if this thing blows up, it could kill, a ton of people because of all these crazy gases and things like that. And he's saying, don't do this because we need to give Batman a chance. So I feel like it just shows more support from Gordon as far as, that basic, or I guess not basic, but, that normal team that we get from Batman and Gordon where, Gordon lets Batman do his thing before, Gordon tells the cops to go in and, clean up whatever is left. So I really like this. And also another great line in this episode is when Kilroy first comes in and she says like, the situation's under control, and he's like, I know, I'm the one controlling it. I'm just like, oh man, she just needs to quit working, because he just told her off right there. And I love that line. I thought it was so funny. He's just like, yeah, I know, because I'm doing it. So back off. But I just really enjoyed that scene because he fought for Batman because he's worked with him in the past couple episodes. We see it more and more. So he's more on Batman's side now, and he sees, even though being a vigilante is obviously illegal, he is a good guy, and he's trying to help people. And of course, destroying the chemical plant would have done a lot more damage than just letting Batman do his thing. Obviously, because Batman solved the problem completely, and fortunately, he was able to signal Gordon to stop the breach, and they didn't like destroy the building completely and like evacuate everybody because of all these crazy chemicals. But just a little hint that we get to see more support from Gordon, for Batman. So it's good for future episodes, and with Raish coming back or Raish coming into the series, it's pretty obvious that things are gonna get even crazier. So we'll probably see a lot more stuff going on as far as Gordon supporting Batman, because the League is obviously very widespread. They have their fingers in everything pretty much. So who knows how that'll really play out in the series, but I think it'll be really good, and it'll help advance multiple plots. Like I said, with Gordon supporting Batman, and obviously Katana and Batman as a team, it'll obviously have a huge impact on that because Katana was with the League of Assassins. But this episode, I thought it was really well done. We got like super hulky ninjas. Um, Lady Sheva came in. She had her fights, which were pretty cool. Her and Batman at the end, I thought was a really cool fight. They were kind of evenly matched, but Sheva, she was in handcuffs at first, and she found a way to escape. And they had their little fight, but eventually she does escape because he goes to save Tatsu. But overall, I really thought this episode was very well done. It got a lot of little points in that you might have like skipped right over if you didn't kind of pick and choose, and that's kind of what makes an episode really good. Like Gordon supporting Batman, you know, so tenaciously, and Tatsu having a lesson through this episode that seemed really simple. It wasn't like it was titled sacrifice, but it didn't seem like it was the main focus of the episode. It seemed like it was more of a subtle message, which I enjoyed because sometimes when it's just insanely obvious, it doesn't make it as entertaining. And I think this one was really cool because it seemed like the focus really was, let's try to keep this place from blowing up. But in there was the actual message that sometimes you have to sacrifice yourself to basically stop things from blowing up. So I thought it was a really good episode. So comment below, let me know what you thought of the episode, and thanks for watching. Oh, actually, before I forget, when Gordon like is doing the whole thing where they're talking about evacuating the city, that was a perfect circle, which just like caught my attention. It was like that's such a perfect circle, and he was just looking at the map, and he was thinking like, this is an excellent circle. I do good work. Thanks for watching.